Welcome to TSAM and welcome to this specialist session on how to face complex clients' requirements in distributing funds across borders. This is a very, fund distributions across borders is a challenging situation at the best of times, but with the increased regulatory requirements around the world, this is getting more and more challenging in particular areas such as outsourcing, anti-management laundering, compliance oversight, performing due diligence of funds, and the general challenge of having risk mitigations and risk controls in place. We're very excited and very fortunate to have two leading experts on the panel today to discuss this over the next 35 minutes, Pino-Sun Becker and Alfred Brandner. I think before we delve into the questions, I'll hand it over to them to introduce themselves. They can probably do a far more articulate situation than I can. So Pino, would you like to sort of give a background to yourself? Or?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here today. I'm the head group of compliance at Acolin. We are a one-stop shop fund distribution service provider in Switzerland and Europe. We provide legal representative, global fund registration and notification services, tied agent solutions, as well as a distribution network comprising over 250 distribution partners in 18 countries, thereby giving our clients access to over 2,000 distribution channels on a global level. We have a dedicated team of professionals ensuring not only in-house compliance, but also compliance with regards to the services our clients have outsourced to us, which of course is especially important considering our role as global or main distributor.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. Alfred, would you be kind to introduce yourself?
Paul, I'm Alfred. I'm the CEO of Falcon Fund Management Luxembourg. I've been working in the fund management industry for more than 20 years and held management positions in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. I'm now in charge for Falcon Fund Management since September 2008. Falcon Fund Management is a Luxembourg domiciled supermanco. Supermanco means we do have the license to administer UCITS fund as well as AIF funds. We do have three business lines. One is the insurance-linked strategy business, so-called cat bond funds. We do have a gold mining fund and a fund of fund business line. And we are currently working on two ESG funds in the renewable energy area. When it comes to distribution, our core distribution markets are Germany, Switzerland, and the UK. But we do also have registration in other EU countries and in Singapore.
That's fantastic. And I believe you guys have worked in the past together. Is that correct? Yeah.
It is correct. Maybe I can say something to the relationship that we have with Acolin. This started already more than 7 years ago. And Acolin acts for Falcon Fund Management as the central distribution agent. This means that we as Falcon Fund Management do have only one central distribution contract with Acolin. And all our distribution partners, and we are talking about 70 distribution partners here, all our other distribution partners are sub-distributors of Acolin. So they do have a sub-distributor contract or rebate agreement. Acolin exercises all our retrocession payments and of course does the due diligence checks on our sub-distribution partners. In addition, I mentioned beforehand that Switzerland is very important for us as one of the core markets for distribution. Acolin acts also as representative agent for Switzerland and UK.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, probably just getting into the details of the actual discussion. I mean, one of the areas I mentioned when we did, and I did my very brief introduction a few moments ago, was around anti-money laundering. And in particularly, which obviously overlaps with counter-terrorist financing. Those two tend to blur into one. I mean, how do you, I mean, I'll speak with Pino first. I mean, how do you feel the current developments are and what's the state of play with the world regarding AML at the moment?
So we have seen a lot of initiatives in this area, a lot of changes. In recent years, we have seen initiatives by the European lawmakers with their AML directives, and have closely monitored the effect upon the fund industry in this regard. Especially of importance is to see how this has impacted local regulators who have taken other initiatives and interpreted the AML laws in different fashions, which has caused dispersion and uncertainty amongst many players on the distribution side. So we are currently hoping to see more and more harmonization, more precision, and well thought out system of how these measures to combat AML could be effectively implemented. So in an effort to create a harmonized system to combat money laundering and terrorist financing in the context of establishing a capital markets union, these initiatives by the European regulators have stirred up some disparity amongst the respective member states.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, Alfred, do you have anything to add to that discussion or the comments made by Pino?
Just maybe showing it from the other side as an outsourcing partner. Of course, AML is getting more and more complex, and especially if we want to kind of add additional distribution countries to our list, the burden gets bigger and bigger. And for us, it's important, especially as a mid-sized company, to keep the fixed cost in this area on, let's say, on a reliable level. Yeah. Which is important for us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because looking at the medium-sized company as we are, kind of, if you really have a big AML case, this can really kill you. For the big banks, it's just they get a fine and they get away with it. But for the medium-sized and small-sized companies, this can be a killing argument. So we have to take even more care for AML than other companies.
Yeah, I mean, so when you do, obviously outsourcing has always been a big thing of financial services and in particular investment management. I mean, what sort of challenges, you sort of mentioned outsourcing, what sort of challenges operationally does outsourcing AML bring? And also what sort of regulatory challenges does it bring? Like, if it all goes wrong, who gets the blame type thing,
I mean, if something goes wrong, who gets the blame? This is clearly, it's us, the kind of the party who decides to outsource. Yeah, kind of, we are still responsible for that. So it's our responsibility to choose the proper outsourcing partner. Yeah, but the reason why we're going to outsource, as I mentioned, we are a mid-sized company, is kind of, we need to be flexible, and fund administration is in the meantime also a cost game. Yeah, and in order to keep this flexibility and keep the costs low, we need to have reliable partners. And of course, one of our main focuses, especially if we work together with someone like Acolin, is this outsourcing control. So we do have really prudent onboarding due diligence when we are going for a new partner. That's one thing. And then we have, kind of a list of risk for our outsourcing partners to have, let's say, quarterly due diligence call, like what we do with Acolin. We do have also, when it comes to AML, we do have 2 days that we spend with Acolin a year to take samples there to check whether their processes and checks are really in kind of in control. Yeah,
so like spot checks almost type thing.
Yeah, spot checks, yeah, kind of. Yeah. So it's really kind of, we really take a close look, and this is not just a requirement by CSSF in our case, but we really take a close look, as we are still responsible for everything.
Yes, well, I mean, sort of Pino, obviously from the other side of the fence, for want of a better word, how do you see the sort of the outsourcing and the controls and the challenges around sort of like AML outsourcing? So,
yeah, I mean, basically, when looking at these requirements, you have two main options. You can either try and build up a in-house solution sort of from scratch, or you can look at potential outsourcing partner in the market who in our case, we have had the great chance and the great benefit of establishing ourselves and establishing our distribution oversight and monitoring over the past couple of years, and worked closely together with companies such as Falcon. And we recognize the challenge they face through the changing requirements, through the strict requirements their local regulators place upon them. And so we not only try to be extremely detailed, extremely precise in the way in which we do our oversight activities, but also we try and be very, very transparent in order to give companies such as Falcon, our outsourcing partners, the confidence and the security that what they have outsourced and what they are ultimately also responsible for is done correctly, is done in a way to mitigate risk, is done in a way to adhere to the requirements imposed by the respective regulators.
That's interesting, yeah. I mean, if we take sort of like stay on the theme of outsourcing or oversight compliance, I think obviously as more and more firms outsource everything. I mean, nowadays, yeah, I mean, for firms, asset management firms are actually a single firm with many outsourcers providing lots of details. Sort of a general level, I know the CSSF have been sending out a lot of new requirements and new demands. I know from my background in the UK under the FCA and the CBI in Ireland, they're doing the same. But what sort of challenges and how do you think the regulators are pushing outsourcing of oversight and outsourcing the compliance oversight? So I don't know if Alfred, you've got any comment on that at all?
I mean, it was 2 years ago that CSSF implemented a new circular on substance circular, and one, let's say, very important part of this was outsourcing. And there they set the rules for what you have to do if you're going to outsource your business. Yeah. Yeah. This is where the regulator is pushing. But I said, this is just one requirement. If the regulator says you have to do this and you have to do that. But the other thing is you do have an internal auditor, you do have an external auditor. And whenever, there's something wrong, let's say within your outsourcing partner, you're going to have this in your control report, which then goes to the CSSF as well. Yeah. So there's the push comes from two sides in this case. Yeah, it's just not the CSSF who does that. Yeah, and then of course it's a big reputational risk that you have if something goes wrong with your partner. Yeah. I think this is the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, Pino, how do you sort of see it from the outsourcer, the other side of the fence, as you to use a horrible phrase again?
I absolutely have to agree. It is very important to us to be aware of the importance of our role we are playing, and we definitely notice that sort of reputational issues are passed on also to us. If there is something with the way we conduct our business, we are mentioned in the fund prospectus. We are transparently shown as the entity responsible for this part of the distribution. So this remains to be an important part for us. It is not only a mention in an audit report for us. We are, of course, standing there with our name. It is a big reputational issue, and it is one of our main clients, one of our corporations over the past, as Alfred said, 7 to 8 years, where we want to be really sure and certain to do our business and fulfill our obligations in a correct and complete manner.
Okay. There's also another thing that I would like to mention, if
please do, yes.
As Acolin executes our retrocession payments, this means that my biggest cost position goes via Acolin. So Acolin kind of executes those biggest, the outpayment of this biggest cost position to 65 distribution partners forward on. Yeah. So if something is going wrong here, I have the troubles with my distribution partners. Yeah. This is also very important in this relationship, and this is why we have a very close look at them.
Because at the end, we always have the investors, and we have all these measures which are in effect aimed to protect the investors, and that means that if we cause any trouble to Alfred, to Falcon, this would of course have serious impact, serious consequences to us. So this is a very serious obligation, of course, for us, and not only from a cost perspective. This is something we aim to manage very effectively and efficiently.
How do you sort of see, looking, we've obviously talked about current developments and the current state of play. What sort of future challenges do you see happening over, say, the next 5 years or so? I mean, what sort of, as the industry matures and more outsourcing is done on the compliance side, it'd be interesting to get both your views on how you see the industry growing. So, yeah. I don't know if Alfred, if you've got any comment on that at all.
Kind of where I see currently, or what you can see on the market, and even through Corona, you saw this already. Kind of, the industry had some outflows, and kind of, especially big companies are going to merge. As it is a cost game anyway. This is the one thing, and the other thing, especially when it comes to distribution, kind of digitalization is more and more important, and digitalization, but will also mean kind of that like a company for us, which has been focusing on institutional partners or investors for a long time, will potentially come back to some retail clients. As you know, digitalization kind of gives us the possibility to readdress the retail clients is the one thing, and the other thing with the ongoing AML requirements, kind of there is even the need on our side kind of to have more information on the final client or the end client, and kind of those were the kind of the two big moves that I see, and therefore it is very important that you have a partner which is very good in IT and is capable, of providing you with the data that you need on that side.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you make about the access to data, because data has always been the blood of the asset management industry. I mean, previously it was data around how funds are performing and how stocks and shares are going up, but now it's almost moving towards another side of the area where data is around who is your client, and it becomes, and now there's serious repercussions if you don't know your client. I mean, with Pino, obviously, with you running the back end and an outsourcing service, what sort of challenges do you see? Are they over the next 5 years? Or are they very similar to what Alfred has just said? So
yeah, it's very similar to what Alfred has said. We see a lot of mergers. We see a lot of initiatives for cost reduction amongst the players, because this has become more and more of an issue in the previous years. We are at the same time, due to this uncertainty caused on some level and dispersion caused with regards to due diligence oversight, we are nonetheless seeing players pop up on the market who want a piece of the cake, who want to establish themselves as the new standard, as the new key firm with regards to distribution oversight, data collection, and so on. Which leads me to the next part. When we look at distribution oversight, it's becoming a more and more data-driven game. We are seeing much more initiatives for standardization, standardized questionnaires, standardized requirements coming up, and people who are trying to collect and evaluate this data. which might pose a chance for AI, machine learning, these parts to come in. But as Alfred said, you need somebody who is very good at not only collecting, but understanding and handling this data. And in essence, then create this transparency, which is necessary to allow your outsourcing partner to transparently look through the distribution chain to the end investor, which is more and more the focus to be clear who the end investor is. And here lies the challenge, one of the main challenges. Another challenge which kind of distinguishes us in our role from many of the purely data collecting, due diligence data collecting services which are popping up is the capability based on our license and our position to reach a judgment on due diligence we're doing, to reach a judgment on the risks inherent in doing business with a certain business partner, and then secondly, placing this into a context. So looking at Falcon, being able to see and understand what does this mean to them, what effect might this have, which again is something the regulators are pushing towards. So not only assessing a risk and fixing a number to it, but putting it in context and understanding what this means to us. And this is also something we're seeing more and more with regards to the reporting requirements, which have come up and had a big impact on, especially on the Luxembourg IFMs in the last 2 years.
Excellent. Okay, we've sort of touched on this point a few times, actually. I'll say, well, you two have touched on this point a few times over the last 15 minutes. And it sort of relates to potentially my favourite subject, due diligence and risk scoring, which is obviously a very wide area. It can cover everything from buying a new house to buying a new car. It's a very, very wide area. But particularly from a sort of like a compliance point of view, what sort of, and particularly in distributing cross funds, cross borders, what sort of challenges do you have with due diligence across that? I don't know. I know we've already mentioned it, Alfred, but I don't know if there's any other comments you'd like to add to that at all. Or?
Well, what I see is kind of, there's lots of lists that you need to check in the meantime, yeah. So it looks like the EU comes out with its own sanction list. The US has sanction lists. Other countries have sanction lists. So whenever approaching a new country, you really need to kind of find out what distribution is about in this country. Beside what focusing on the core business, which is kind of to get to sell your product, yeah. But and this is see that it's getting more and more complex as the political environment also is getting more and more complex, and this is changing also very fast, yeah. It just new sanctions come in overnight, and then you just have a few days to get this done, yeah. This is where I see the challenges, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Pino, if you've got any sort of comment on the due diligence challenges that you've encountered over the past few years, or?
Yeah, it actually we noticed kind of a interesting development in that regard, especially when conducting due diligence on distribution partners outside of the EU. We, a couple of years ago, and still on some level today, we encountered lots of negative feedback. People thought we were mistrusting them. They saw it more as us questioning their adherence to law and their reputation. Now this kind of formalistic, bowing to the formalistic requirements has, in essence, resulted from this. People have become aware that they have to deliver this information. They are not always necessarily very happy that they have to do it, but they bow to these obligations. And so there we have seen a little bit of a change. now more and more we are recognizing that people are actually getting a use out of this data, out of this information. They're actually seeing, okay, this does not only have a regulatory impact, but this actually has a strategic impact for us. We can use this information and use it to our benefit to understand our distribution channels, to understand how we can leverage what we have gained of insight to our benefit. And so on the one hand side, I agree, it's still a very formalistic requirement, especially when considering the amounting standardization we are seeing in this regard, looking into sanction lists, which of course are a very important part, where we can get certain amounts of also of automatization going to support us, but a specific element remains requiring let's say a human or manual input in helping put this information into context. I mean, it makes a vast difference if I have a great amount of distribution via a smaller company, or I have a small amount of distribution via the same company. It changes the way I look at this distribution partner, and allowing to put this context into the business relationship, I think is essential, and is something not only we are seeing, but our partners are seeing, regulators are seeing, and this is having an increasing impact on our daily business and how we interpret and understand our data.
Yeah, sorry, Alfred, go ahead, please.
Yeah, may I just add something to this? Kind of Pino just mentioned, this strategic point, and I think this is very important because what we should not, or even saying what we must not do, is kind of to make this due diligence exercise a tick the box exercise. Kind of we really need to go in and then understand our counterparty. Yeah, so kind of there's a little bit more that we need to do. And there's another kind of development that I would like to mention is, if you're looking at the development of wealth creation worldwide, yeah, what you see is kind of, currently it's the US and it's Europe, kind of where most of the money sits, but the growth is going to take place somewhere else, which means for us that our future clients will probably not be within the European Union, although it will be a major part of this. Yeah, and for this we need to make a word and say, okay, we cannot just lean back and say, okay, we only accept EU partners and this is all clean. Yeah, we need to kind of prepare our business, for doing AML done really on a, let's say, worldwide basis, or especially with other continents and focusing there.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting points I think I picked up from yours points is obviously a due diligence. I like the phrase, you don't want it to be a tick boxing exercise. I think that's a fantastic phrase, because it can become that. You just literally say, we want to get a copy of the accounts, we got it ticked in it, and there's no deep analysis into what they are. I mean, looking for, obviously one of the challenges around due diligence is, I think, for two things. One is getting answers to all the questions, which is a lot easier said than done. Like a ream of data. And the other thing is then delving into that data to try and really understand it, because obviously you link two variables together, you might get a different answer than you may think about. Do you think there's any sort of like and I think we mentioned sort of like big data and machine learning earlier on the call. Do you think there's any sort of like new technologies that have come along that may help speed the process up, or make it easier to, or make it less harder to miss points? It's always very interesting.
Well, up to now, I haven't. Well, I'm continuously, together with my team, we're monitoring the market in this regard, and there have been some ideas. There have been some initiatives, but they have all been relatively limited up to now. It's been more the focus on purely data collection and collecting as much as possible, then throwing it at the counterparty and saying, here, do with it what you want, what you need. This is everything we can give you. Now, slowly with this change in mind, I believe that the profit of investing in these sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence in due diligence is something we might more and more recognize. Still, I don't know how far we can rely on this, especially at the beginning. I believe there is still a very important subjective part, subjectively understanding the relationship and how this data, how this information influences your counterparty and the business they're trying to conduct.
Okay. And also another sort of similar question, do you think there's any new regulatory guidance or any sort of European law or just legislation that would be helpful in making due diligence easier to do?
So the big initiative which has come now is kind of the roadmap of the European Commission, which they have published, containing many points, many challenges they have identified and trying to tackle over the next coming years. One big part of this is the strong push towards harmonization, minimizing the potential for gold plating amongst member states. And one big part in that regard is a European AML regulation, which we expect to be coming somewhere next year, which of course would have a massive impact on with regards to standardization, creating a uniform understanding of concepts, of rules, of procedures, which at least within the context of Europe, we believe will have a great impact. As Alfred said, things are moving, so we have to continuously also look over to other regions, look over to Asia, look over also still to the US, and see where the developments lie there too, in order to provide the information and the know-how necessary in order to conduct distribution activities in these areas then too. Okay.
Alfred, do you have any comment on that at all? I mean, being on the front line or the other side of the fence, as I keep on saying.
I would just say I'm not waiting for new laws. I think what we have with the substance requirements from the TSAM, this is a good paper, and to really think through it, you can also you see what needs to be done in this area, and I think this is already sufficient at this stage of time.
Okay, unfortunately, I think we're almost coming to the end of our 35-minute slots. Before I bring everything to a close, is there any final points you guys like to mention? Just to, any other or more important points I haven't asked you to raise at all?
I mean, for me, from an outsourcing base, we need to stay flexible and still have to have low costs, yeah. And with this flexibility, I can only get if I'm going to outsource to reliable partners, and this is very important for me. Yeah.
Pino, any closing remarks?
Yeah, latching on to what Alfred just said, the point flexibility, we have to be able to, with our system of distribution oversight, to be flexible and aware enough to react to regulatory changes and new requirements efficiently and correctly in order to conduct an effective oversight over our distribution network.
Okay, that's great. So therefore, unfortunately, as much as reluctantly, because I'm enjoying the discussion, and I think we could probably go on for another couple of hours at this rate, I have to bring this seminar to an end. So from a personal note, and on from behalf of TSAM, to thank you very much for your time and input. I must admit, I'm far more knowledgeable about the subject than I was 35 minutes ago. And I wish you all the best for the future, and thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.